All right. Good morning and welcome everyone to another video lecture in the Beowulf series for this class. Going to go ahead and start us off with a pun. That is, why don't anteaters get sick? Because they're full of antibodies. All right, moving on. Recapping from where we left off last week, we began reading Beowulf, Old English epic, written by a monk in England around 800 AD or so, but set in Sweden and Denmark around 500 AD amongst the various Viking clans in that area at the time, specifically the Geats in Sweden and the Danes in Denmark. The Danes have some monster troubles, and a warrior from the Geats, Beowulf, comes to help them for various reasons. He slays the monster that was plaguing them for 12 years, earns fame, rewards, and embarrasses Unferth a bit for insulting him, saying he couldn't do it. So this week, the story continues, and it's odd that the story continues because that sort of suggests something. Like whenever you hit a dangerous part in a book, you wonder, is the character going to make it? Is the story over? Well, then you see that there's this much of the book left, and it's like, oh, no, something has to happen now. Kind of giving it away. The book is definitely not over. There's definitely more. In this story, there's two layers, and if we were reading the full book, we'd see this a little more. There's the layer on the surface with the monsters. There's always another monster, no matter how many they kill, which suggests the cycle is endless, goes on and on, only ends in death. Beneath the surface is the Viking clans fighting each other for vengeance, vengeance killing feuds, vendettas, and that also never ends. One is parallel to the other. There's a connection, a juxtaposition there. One might suggest that the cycle of vengeance is also not only never ending, but monstrous. Well, let's look at the study guide for this week, which you can find in the lecture slides for any of the days this week, right after the vocab. Questions for this week. What piece of Beowulf's equipment survives the battle with Grendel's mother? What trophy does he take from the battle with Grendel's mother, and what does he not take? How does Beowulf change over the course of the three battles? Grendel, Grendel's mother, and the dragon. Who stands by Beowulf in his final battle with the dragon and gives a speech to the running Thanes? How does Beowulf die? What are Beowulf's last words and thoughts concerning? What were the most important events in Beowulf's life? And what are Beowulf's last requests, and which ones are followed or not followed? Ignore 9 and 10 on my screen. I didn't give that to you for this week because that's based on an article in the textbook, which you do not have at the moment. So we're just focusing on 1 through 8. For today's reading, the battle with Grendel's mother, you will just want to focus on the first 3 for today. Well, 1, 2, and part of 3. Moving right along. So, in between what you read last time and where we are now, they find that Grendel's mother has taken vengeance, killed people, taken some back to her lair to snack on later. Hrothgar is sad. Beowulf says, don't be sad. Be mad. Get vengeance. Now is not the time for weeping. Now is the time for revenge, echoing how the Vikings treated each other in real life. And so they go there with all their warriors, Danes and Geats. Unferth offers Beowulf an apology, shows that he's changed his mind about Beowulf, and offers him his ancestral sword, Hrunting. Back then, swords gained a name and gained fame, just like the warriors did, if they survived many battles or saw their users through many battles. They gained a fame of their own. So this is apparently a good sword. And for Beowulf, or for Unferth to offer this to Beowulf is a big deal. Now, it shows that he is truly apologetic, but it also shows that he's not willing to help if he's giving up his sword. That being said, Beowulf accepts the apology, says, thanks, Unferth. No problem. I'll take this sword, sure. So he's forgiving. Beowulf shows he is the bigger man. He shows that he's not really here to start fights or petty squabbles. He's here to kill monsters and save people. Arguing with drunk dudes is not one of his priorities. Holding grudges against people for mouthing off is not one of his priorities. And so they get to the lair, which is a lake in the midst of the mountains in the dark, cold swamps called the moors, the marshes, the mere. And there's a lake filled with unnatural darkness and covered in unnatural magical fire. One thing you'll note in a lot of books, it's become a recurring motif, is that magical monsters often have green or blue fire associated with them. There's also sea serpents here, but I guess they would be lake serpents at this point. And there's bunches of other things. The area exudes an unnatural cold that keeps the trees frosty all times of year, and it exudes some sort of aura about it, that animals, natural creatures, avoid it. They are afraid of it. The full text gives this analogy where if a deer is running from hunting dogs and the only way it can survive is to cross the lake, it's not gonna. It's gonna lay down and die and not cross the lake. It's that scary to the animals. By the way, that kind of prolonged simile is usually called an epic simile. Good thing because we're in an epic. But moving on, they shoot down enough of the sea serpents or lake serpents with arrows and spears to clear Beowulf a path to jump in. Now, Beowulf this time is going in prepared, not like the battle with Grendel. He's already proven himself, so now he's going in with armor, weapons, helmet, shield, sword, all of that. So he leaps into the lake and would not wait for anyone's answer. The heaving water covered him over. For hours he sank through the waves. At last he saw the mud of the bottom. And all at once the greedy she-wolf, that's a kenning, who'd ruled these waters for 500 years, so 50, discovered him, saw that a creature from above had come to explore the bottom of her wet world. How Beowulf's breathing underwater, I have no idea. Maybe he's just really good at holding his breath, or maybe this place is magical and you can breathe. I don't know. She welcomed him in her claws, clutched him at him savagely, but could not harm him, tried to work her fingers through the tight, ring-woven mail on his breast, but tore and scratched in vain. Then she carried him, armor and sword and all, to her home. He struggled to free his weapon and failed. The fight brought other monsters swimming to see her catch, a host of sea beasts who beat at his mail shirt, stabbing with tusks and teeth as they followed along. That he realized suddenly that she'd brought him into someone's battle hall, and there the water's heat could not harm him, nor anything in the lake attack him through the building's high arched roof. A brilliant light burned all around him, the lake itself like a fiery flame. Lots of things to notice here. One, Grendel's mother, creatively named Grendel's mother, and the other lake serpents cannot get through his armor, his chainmail shirt. It's very, very strong, and apparently that's supposed to be very impressive to us, significant enough to describe twice. One thing that might be familiar to you if you've ever read The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, there's this mithril shirt that Bilbo and that Frodo wears that's emphasized for being super strong. In Lord of the Rings, Frodo's, it's attacked various times, and everybody's like, whoa, how'd you survive that? And he's like, mithril shirt. And this is kind of like that because Tolkien was a huge Beowulf fan. You'll see bits of Beowulf, little bits here and there throughout Tolkien's works, because he was probably Beowulf's biggest fan, scholar, person ever. So, other things to note. The text states that this place looks like someone's battle hall. That's suggesting that this cave is not a cave. It's not natural. It's a ruin of an ancient building. We don't know who built it yet. The story will tell us later. But this adds a layer of ancientness to the story. A lot of fantasy stories do this in modern times. It's set in an ancient or medieval time, but there's a layer of ancientness before that, adding depth to the fictional world. So here we have a monk writing 800 AD about something that happened-ish 500 AD, so that's ancient for him. Then we have these ancient ruins that are ancient even in that time, so much so that Beowulf has no idea where they're from. But they're underwater now, so. Also, things to note, the magic fire continues to burn underwater, so definitely magical, but it doesn't give off heat, only light. So he gets near it, doesn't burn him, doesn't even warm him. So strictly light producing fire, that's definitely not natural. Then he saw the mighty water witch and swung his sword, his ring-marked blade, straight at her head. The iron sang its fierce song, sang Beowulf's strength. But her guest discovered that no sword could slice her evil skin, that Hrunting could not hurt her, was useless now when he needed it. They wrestled. She ripped and tore and clawed at him, bit holes in his helmet, and that too failed him. For the first time in years of being worn to war, it would earn no glory. It was the last time anyone would wear it. But Beowulf longed only for fame, leaped back into battle. He tossed the sword aside, angry. The steel-edged blade lay where he dropped it. So let's pause there and note that Beowulf uses Unferth's sword. Fronting, it doesn't work. Think about why. Think about why he probably should have known that before going into the battle. What could Grendel do in the battle last night? He was immune to human weapons, had a magic spell that made him immune to human weapons. So it follows that the mother might know the same spells. Oh well, so while being a good apology, Hrunting isn't going to cut it today. It's not the cutting-edge technology he needs. Anyway, he tosses the sword aside, angry. The steel-edged blade lay where he dropped it. If weapons were useless, he used his hands. I mean, strength worked with Grendel. Why not here? The strength in his fingers. So fame comes to the men who mean to win it and care about nothing else. He raised his arms and seized her by the shoulder. Anger doubled his strength. So he's not quite the Hulk, but anger does make him stronger. He threw her to the floor. She fell, Grendel's fierce mother, and the Geat's proud prince was ready to leap on her. But she rose at once and repaid him with her clutching claws, wildly tearing at him. He was weary, that best and strongest of soldiers. His feet stumbled, and in an instant she had him down, held helpless, squatting with her weight on his stomach. She drew a dagger, brown with dried blood, and prepared to avenge her only son. But he was stretched on his back, and her stabbing blade was blunted by the woven mail shirt he wore on his chest. The hammered links held, the point could not touch him. He'd have traveled to the bottom of the earth, Edgethow's son, and died there, if not shining woven metal had not helped him. The holy God who sent him victory gave judgment for the truth and right, ruler of the heavens, once Beowulf was back on his feet and fighting. All right, notice here that Beowulf tries his strength, and it's also not good enough. It was with Grendel, but not here. Grendel's mother's a fiercer opponent. Not only does she pin him to the ground, but she pulls a rusty, blood-encrusted dagger. Apparently monsters don't clean their weapons. And pins him, and again, the chainmail shirt miraculously saves him, and it reminds us that though he is a warrior of the Geats in Sweden, he is also the chosen one of the Christian God. So, interesting mix there. That's, again, the monk author meshing his culture with this culture. Yes. So, we'll see what Beowulf does now. Then he saw, hanging on the wall, a heavy sword, hammered by giants, strong and blessed with their magic, the best of all weapons, but so massive that no ordinary man could lift it. Its carved and decorated length, he drew it from its scabbard, broke the chain on its hilt, and then, savage now, angry and desperate, lifted it high over his head and struck with all the strength he had left. Caught her in the neck and cut it through. Broke bones and all, her body fell to the floor lifeless. The sword was wet with her blood, and Beowulf rejoiced at the sight. So aside from being some more very bloody poetry here, some interesting things, like a dungeon in a Zelda video game, Beowulf just happens to find the very weapon he needs to beat the boss of this dungeon in that dungeon, right there in the same building. A giant's blade. Remember that the author lumps all magical creatures together, giants, elves, whatever. They're all monsters, they're all magical, they have magic. So their weapons are magic. That's different from human weapons. The monster is immune to human weapons, didn't say anything about magical or non-human weapons. And lo and behold, that works. These little technical outs in battle, Tolkien also seems to take influence from, if you've read Lord of the Rings, with the Lord of the Nazgul saying, "No man can hurt me." And then the warrior takes off her helmet. She's like, "But I'm no man," and kills him. So, spoilers there. But technical things in battle, magical technicalities, can prove useful in your medieval epics and your modern fantasy novels. So the giant's blade cuts through. And notice that the darkness, the unnatural magical darkness, parts immediately. The brilliant light shone suddenly as though burning in that hall, and as bright as heaven's candle, it lit the sky. So this has become kind of a cliche in modern stories. You beat the evil monster, the evil sorcerer, the darkness parts, it's sunny, it's bright, it's cheery, as if the weather responds to our mood. And just kind of like if it rains when you're sad, the pathetic fallacy, the weather responds to our personal issues. Here, the world is saved and the light is shining again. No more unnatural darkness. It's a cliche now, but it had to start somewhere, and Beowulf's a really old book, so maybe this is one of the earlier examples. So Beowulf, looked around at her home, following along the hall, went walking, his hands tied on the sword, his heart still angry. He was hunting another monster, a dead monster, and took his weapon with him for final revenge against Grendel's vicious attacks, his nighttime raids, over and over, coming to Heorot when Hrothgar's men slept, killing them in their beds, eating some on the spot, 15 or more, and running to the loathsome moor. Just in case we forgot, the author's reminding us who Grendel is. With another such sickening meal waiting in his pouch. But Beowulf repaid him for those visits, found him lying dead in the corner, armless, exactly as that fierce fighter had sent him out from Heorot. Then he struck off his head with a single swift blow. Whoosh! The body jerked for one last time, then lay still. As disturbing as that is, interesting things to note here. Beowulf came to fight Grendel's mother, killed her, and took another trophy from Grendel, not Grendel's mother. There are various things we could pull from this. One, Grendel's mother did take the arm trophy back, so maybe he needed another one, needed a replacement. Two, might be a macho thing. She is a female monster, and maybe he doesn't want to admit that he almost died to a female monster, takes another trophy from a man monster that's more macho manly or something. Another point for that particular interpretation, if we read the full text of the book, the narrator suggests, oh, yes, there is a second monster, Grendel's mother, but she will be less in might than Grendel, for she is a female monster, which doesn't prove true in the rest of the book. The narrator says that, and then in the battle, the monster is way harder than Grendel. Gives Beowulf more of a hard time. So that's kind of a thing here. Option 3 with the interpretation. Grendel terrorized them for 12 years. Grendel's mother, one night. So that's bad. Murder's bad, of course. One night of murder, bad. 12 years of murder, kind of worse, kind of sticks in your memory more, your emotions. So again, having another trophy from Grendel might be more satisfying. Another thing to note is that after this scene, he goes back to Hrothgar, swims up with the head in one hand and the giant's blade in the other. But the giant's blade is actually melted because Grendel's mother apparently has acid blood. And it melts the blade. He just has the handle, which apparently has the story of the biblical flood etched on the hilt. that killed all the giants. I don't know how the giants made the sword and then etched the story of how they died on the hilt. That seems odd. But he swims up with the hilt and Grendel's head, gives them to Hrothgar for funsies. So they have another trophy and a very interesting heirloom. And Hrothgar rewards him a lot more, gives him some fatherly advice and some foreshadowing about the future, heavy foreshadowing, and sends him home. Next time, we'll be reading about Beowulf as an old man, king of his own people, the Geats. That is very different from the movie, which changes a lot. You know, in the book, he goes back home and becomes king of the Geats after his uncle and his uncle's son both die and pass the throne on to him. We'll talk about that more later. But let's go ahead and look at the study guide. Again, remember, answer questions 1 and 2 and maybe part of 3. You might have the gist of where 3 is going, but you can wait till after the next reading if you like. There's a trend starting between the battle with Grendel, Grendel's mother, and the dragon. We'll answer more next time. Let's end with another pun. Excuse me, ma'am. What? Would you like to donate to my charity? Maybe. What's it called? Caw, 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 caw. It's for good cause. And with that, I'll see you later. Take care and have a good day.